Amazing people, great adventures, and awesome destinations right here in Idaho. I'm Travis Culver, your host, and this is Love Where You Live. We visit Zhoo Winery and learn from Hadley what wines to pair with dinner.
So the wines that we make tend to drink best when served with food.
Matt and his family overcome amazing difficulties to bring the bird stop to downtown Caldwell.
When you lose a spouse, you lose, at a young age, you lose a mom, lose a dad. You kind of learn about what's important, and it's people, not stuff.
And Lee and David Manuel at Hot Lake Springs bring the community together to bring a former resort back to life.
It was like an old-fashioned barn raising or an old-fashioned church raising.
Right.
Where we had at least 2 volunteers here for years.
This week we kicked things off at the Zhoo Winery in Marsing, Idaho with Hadley, who was literally born into the wine business.
Well, I did grow up in the family business. My parents started Hell's Canyon Winery in the early 80s here in southwest Idaho. And later my sisters and I started Zhoo Wine. So we're the second generation daughter brand of Hell's Canyon Winery.
Where's Zhoo from? I have to ask you that. What does that mean?
Zhoo is a term of endearment. So anything or one that's your loved one, you can call your Zhoo.
Where did that come
we
from?
are, well, it's French-German,
Okay.
but it's spelled phonetically. So you would typically see it like J-O-U. And we're our dad's 3 Zhoo girls.
Oh, so that's where the name came from.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned there's 3 girls. Is your third sister involved too?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, so my oldest sister Bijou is our winemaker for Zhoo Wines. And then Jocelyn, she does all of our marketing, our graphics, she does the label design. And then I do the events and manage the tasting room here.
Now you mentioned that your older sister, you say Bijou? Mm-hmm. Is that somehow connected? The
Yeah.
Zhoo and Bijou?
Yeah, so we kind of went with her name and transformed it into Zhoo.
Now you said she's the winemaker, so that sounds different to me because a lot of the wineries here in the Sunny Slope region, they'll grow the wines and then there's someone else who actually makes the wines. Do you make them here?
We do. We do. So we grow the grapes and then we bring them into the winery, and we don't do a lot of high-tech winemaking here. We have more of a just watch it and make sure nothing goes wrong. And so she does that for Zhoo, and then my dad is the winemaker for Hell's Canyon Wines. And both my dad and my sister Bijou come from a food background. They both went to culinary school. So the wines that we make tend to drink best when served with food.
Okay. So yours are intentionally paired, or not paired, that's the wrong word. They're actually intentionally put together to be paired.
Right. Therefore, we call them food wines.
So give me an example, like we're standing in front of your Zhoo line.
Yes.
What is an example of a wine that you'd like to kind of showcase, and like what would you put with it?
Okay, that's a good question. So a really popular wine in the summertime is our Zhoo Redhead. This is a 100% rosé of Syrah. And we always tell people this is a great wine to have with ethnic foods. So pad thai, Indian food, Mexican food, anything that's kind of spicy.
I'm going to say something that's strong and flavorful, it sounds
Yeah.
like, with very spicy, okay?
Right, so that's a little harder to pair a red with or a white because the flavors are so variable and diverse. So we say a rosé is a great approach to a food that is hard to pair wine with.
What would you put with steak? What's one of your wines you would pair with steak? Is that harder?
We usually do a robust red, and we have one that's made of Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and Merlot, so probably our claret, our Zhoo claret.
And then Hell's Canyon, we're going to go over here and take a look at this too. Hell's Canyon is your mom and dad's brand.
Yes.
What do we have here? What are your...
Here we have a single varietal Cabernet Sauvignon, and we have our Western Conservation Series. We call it Deer Slayer Syrah. And this is a family photograph of my great-grandfather in the 30s.
Oh, wow.
And the photograph is called Bringing Home the Bacon because he has 2 deer on the front of his car. And then we have one of our signature wines here, our Retriever Red. And this is a Syrah-based blend. And we have our new Heritage Series Cabernet Franc, and this is also a single varietal. So Hell's Canyon does more single varietals, very good aging wines.
What is single varietal?
That means it's made with one grape. It's not a blend.
Every tasting room is different. And first off, who put your tasting room together? Was it a cooperative thing? Did you do it? Who was responsible for designing it and laying it out and all that?
Well, we had the space. This is actually the house I grew up in. And then it was remodeled into a bed and breakfast in the early 2000s. And now we run it strictly as our wine bar tasting room. So my sister Jocelyn and my mom designed the space to really accommodate the public and have a retail shop and also a tasting space. And we have indoor, outdoor areas. So really the bar was put together based on the foundation of what we had already.
I'm always overwhelmed how much goes into a bottle of wine.
Yeah, I think that's why wine tells such a story, and it's also such an experience for people, because where they drink it, who they drink it with, if they know anything about the history of where the wine came from. I mean, it's such a process that goes into making each unique bottle, and particularly when you're talking about a smaller scale operation where we're growing the grapes and making the wine and making all the decisions. And it's not to say that every one is going to be just what we want, but that's kind of the fun of it too. They take on a character of their own.
Thank you, Hadley, so
Yeah,
much
thank
for
you
your
so much
time.
for
It's
being
so
here.
great to be here. Thank you for sharing Hell's Canyon and Zhoo wines. If you want to know more about either of these wine varieties and Hadley and her family and what they're all about, visit lovewhereyoulivetv.com. Coming up after the break, we talk with Lee at Hot Lake Springs and learn how her entire family is what it took to bring a resort back to life near Grande, Oregon. Welcome back to Love Where You Live. We're at Hot Lake Springs near Grande, Oregon, talking with Lee about how she and her family chose to face incredible odds to resurrect a former resort.
Our son brought us out on a Sunday afternoon, November the 1st.
So like a, hey mom, I want to show you something kind of thing?
Kind of thing. And he'd gotten a hold of all the rest of the family as well and said, you know, meet me at Walmart. And then we formed a caravan, and he drove us all out here. Of course, David and I was aware it was here, but he thought he'd just, you know, discovered the wheel, and he was going to show everybody everything the first time. The whole family kind of rolled their eyes a little bit, you know, and smiled. And this particular son was, he didn't talk a lot, and so didn't have a lot to say. So when he did, you know, everybody kind of listened to him, and we walked through it for maybe an hour, and everybody agreed. You know, I just looked at the other kids who were young adults at that time and said, you know, what do you think? What do you want to do? Now, understand, all of these young adults had businesses. We already had 13 businesses, and they all were responsible for those, and some of them even had young families. And we said, what do you want to do? And they all said, yeah, we'll sell everything. Let's do it. Let's just do it. So it wasn't the kind of thing that you say, okay, let's do diligence, because it wasn't rocket science to figure out that this really wasn't a good idea. So we didn't want to do any diligence. No, you didn't have to figure that out. So we just did it, and I literally called a friend of mine, and we went and got on a plane, and we owned it the next morning. There had been some investors involved, and she was one of them. All of these investors in another state had gotten angry at each other because they were left with this mess, and I think sued each other and took a plan around a round table and kind of divided things up. And so she was left with what everybody considered was the trash piece. And so she wasn't a very happy lady about that. In fact, I called her before we headed down, and she hung up on me. She didn't want to talk to me at all. Oh. And so we went anyway, and which again, you know, probably wasn't the best plan. But she was shocked. We knocked on her door and said, we tried to call and you hung up on us. And she had us in, and her husband, and explained to us how many times a day that she was hassled by people who pretended they wanted to buy it or promised to do this. And what would happen is every time somebody would come in, they would tear something up or take something or rate it a little more, and it was just falling down and down and down. Folks had even started to take the bricks out of the back of the building, and so it was literally coming apart. No roof, no windows, no floors. Once they realized we were serious. In fact, it didn't take very much conversation, and I think we might have took a walk, or we left for a few minutes to kind of absorb some of the information that she told us, and then we came back, and she opened the door and said, you know, get in here and sign some papers. Let's just get this done. And so we walked away with the deal on a Sunday afternoon. Now, it could very well be that it could not have been done on any day but a Sunday, because there were so many clouds on the title, and there was so so many people trying to get it destroyed and tore down. So it could be that that Sunday thing was a real blessing.
After Lee and her family purchased the resort, it was now time to remodel. After the break, Lee shares how they transformed the property from a ghost town into what you see today. Thanks for joining us on Love Where You Live. We're at Hot Lake Springs in LeGrande, Oregon with Lee. Now, before the break, we learned how it took some dreaming and a rushed Sunday afternoon flight to buy the property. Now comes the real work, the remodel. After everybody was rah, go team, what actually happened? What did the family actually do?
We immediately started up. I went and bought a motorhome, and the kids all got travel trailer kind of things. And I hired a nighttime construction crew to work graveyard because I had to run the businesses during the day. But it was the kind of thing that once you started, you couldn't take your hands off of it because it had been a party palace for 50 years, you know. So you had to stay right on it. So I worked a graveyard crew from about 6 or so at night until 5 or 6 in the morning, cleaning up. I had a fire that burned 7 months day and night to burn the trash. Hauled 70 semi-loads of garbage.
Out of here?
Out of here. And
so it was a party palace.
it really was, yeah. It was a dump site. And brought in 1,000 loads of fill dirt, base rock, topsoil, that sort of thing. We planted 1,000 trees and bushes to kind of get the grounds under control and do landscaping and fill in hot spots and all that sort of thing. And so that went on for 15 months without not a day that we didn't do that.
Why did you put all that time into this?
At the time there was no question.
Yeah.
Now it sounds a little crazy.
Looking back on it, Lee's like, I don't know.
I think we're all history buffs, and we're builders and fixers, and we like a good challenge. And
boy, I'd say 75,000 square foot rundown party palace. That's a heck of a challenge, Lee.
The community really has been incredible and is still incredible. It was like an old-fashioned barn raising or an old-fashioned church raising,
right.
where we had at least 2 volunteers here, sometimes 10, but at least 2 every day for years.
Like
years.
A multiple year worker bee.
No kidding.
So, I mean, here we are years later, and I look around it now, and it's obviously so much better, so much better than when you found it. What do you feel when you look around here now?
We're still so busy that I don't get a lot of opportunity to do that. But just the thought of that is pretty emotional. Mm-hmm. Because we poured our lifetime in it, practically a generation, and the rest of the world has kept turning. Now some of those babies that were in diapers are, they're getting ready to graduate from high school. And so it is really emotional. It's a big piece of our family's life and 3 generations of our family, So it's emotional. We feel very thankful and really fortunate that we had the privilege of learning the things we've learned and having the opportunity to do it. I think now more than when we were in it, I think we realize what a blessing and how, I don't want to use the word lucky, but the chances of this working and being successful were not very high. We didn't know it at the time.
I could just imagine 100 years ago, women sitting around a table chatting and chuckling in their dresses, and men wandering in off the trail exhausted from a long day and all that kind of stuff, and just realizing, here's something that could have been lost to history forever. And you guys saved it. And it's a pretty big deal.
Well, thank you.
You saved
That's
a piece
very
of history.
nice.
But thank you for the time you invested in this, the history that you saved. Your husband's museum is second to none. I was very shocked, what he has there. The resort now offers a bed and breakfast, a history museum, a chance to see her husband's bronze artwork, and numerous places to enjoy the natural hot springs. You can see the entire history museum tour we did with Lee's husband David at lovewhereyoulivetv.com, keyword Hot Lake Springs. Things are changing in downtown Caldwell, and one business is leading the way to making their city better with live music, great coffee, delicious food, and a whole lot of heart. Up next, we visit Matt and the Bird Stop in downtown Caldwell. You know, if you'd visited downtown Caldwell even a few years ago, you would have thought that it was a town that had probably seen its glory days. But there's been a recent renaissance in downtown Caldwell, and one of the chief reasons for it is a guy named Matt Kelly. Now, Matt and his wife own the Bird Stop Coffee Shop in downtown Caldwell, and we're headed to hang out with Matt for a little while and talk with him about what his plans are, as well as some of the other exciting plans going on right now in Caldwell for its rebirth coming in the near future. So I'm here at the Bird Stop in Caldwell, Idaho with Matt Kelly, who is the founder, owner of the Bird Stop. You've put your heart and soul into this thing, man. Like, why did you invest in Caldwell so deeply?
You know, my wife passed away and I ended up remarrying my wife Karen, and we had Kelly Electric, and when the economy took a dump and it was kind of like all my friends were literally leaving the country, going to Australia, going to Afghanistan, that kind of stuff. And we felt like our kids had been through enough change in their life.
Yeah, Australia seemed a little far away.
Yeah, you know. And we decided we were going to kind of rebirth or whatever the Bird Stop, and we had no idea it was going to do what it did.
Which is what?
Well, we started out running like a gift store, and eventually, as the season went on, people were hurting, and they just couldn't spend money on that kind of stuff at the time as the economy's recovering. So we started selling local fruits and vegetables. And
but still no coffee at this point.
Still no coffee, but everybody that came in was like, oh my gosh, we love your family. We love what you guys do. It's like, we want to hang out here, but you guys need to do coffee. And so Karen and I started looking downtown, and the more we kind of prayed about it, we felt like we were supposed to come downtown. And you know, downtown had almost nothing going on at the time. This was 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
And you know, I think the family had an intervention. You know, they're like, serious? Is this what you guys think you should do?
Yeah.
We're like, no, we really feel like, yeah, we want to make a difference. And we had walked downtown. We really felt like downtown had the bones here to be an amazing place.
And then you wind up being in this facility, which is, by the way, used to be what, an old bank, right? I mean, because you've got some really cool vaults
Idaho
in here.
First National. It was built like around 1906 or so. We had already fallen in love with this building, but felt like it was way out of our scope, our reach. Long story short, we ended up getting into this building partly because we were willing to just step out on a limb and do it, and also we just kind of put everything we had to make the deal happen. And we did a GoFundMe, and it's nuts how people got behind us, and we raised, I don't even remember now, $20-some thousand
like
towards
initial
the remodel for this building.
One thing I know about you is that family is very important to you. What role has your family played in this place?
Well, you know, a lot of our lives completely changed, Karen and I both, and our kids, no doubt our kids. When you lose a spouse, you lose, you know, at a young age, lose a mom, lose a dad. You kind of learn about what's important, and it's people, not stuff. But we really learned that lesson. And, you know, even the Bird Stop, the whole idea behind it, after losing a spouse and Karen losing a husband, we pretty much decided we wanted our lives to make a difference. We only get so much time, right? And we wanted that to impact a community, not just our family, but our family along with it, in mentoring. And our kids love video games like everyone else, but our kids know how to work. They are as big a part of this as we are. We've just been more the guide along the way to shape it and grow it and a lot of prayer, and a lot of people backing us in prayer.
Recently, your son was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and this community came around you and your son. I mean, I'm curious how that felt. I mean, because they raised tens of thousands of dollars, I believe, to help with his medical costs and things like that. How did that feel for you guys?
So when we got sideswiped with this thing of our son having a brain tumor and having to have this major surgery, we shut down for close to 2 months. And we had to make that decision that it was about, you know, him and not about money, and we shut it down. And the crazy thing is, the community stepped in. Holly Cook like begged. First I said, no way, too much stress. I don't know how it's gonna work, you know, if it's gonna rain manna or what, but we are not dealing with this, with the bird stop, while we deal with our son's brain tumor and whatnot. And you know, you could just sense a spirit about it. Was not just about the brain tumor, it was not just about us, it was about a community learning to come together as a community, right? If you pulled us out and put someone else in, it was important that this thing went on. And I really believe that. And yeah, it changed our thinking about people and community and humanity.
So many reasons to come check out the Bird Stop, to come check out downtown Caldwell. If you'd like to know more about the Bird Stop, simply look up keyword Bird Stop at lovewhereyoulivetv.com. That's all we got for you this time on Love Where You Live, but if you want to know more about the destinations you saw featured, or maybe you want to recommend one you think we should check out, you can also pick up your Love Where You Live gear all in one place. That's lovewhereyoulivetv.com, and we'll see you next time.